Guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about challenges medical coders face and how to handle them. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, I will start off by saying this. Everybody's skill level is going to be different walking into this field. Some of us have had previous background in medical, some of us haven't. I didn't, okay? So I knew nothing about interacting with providers on a professional level, as far as like not being a patient, but actually being somebody who works with them. The thing about medical coders and providers, and I'm going to start with the providers first, all right? The thing about medical coders and providers is we are a team, all right? Now, sometimes with providers, they already have this thing of, well, I tell my nurses what to do, I tell the staff what to do, I'm going to tell the medical coders what to do. In our instance, as medical coders, we have to code based on documentation, period. There is no getting around it. There's no nothing. There's no, the provider wants this code, that's the code he's going to get. If the documentation does not support that code, he's not getting that code, or she's not getting that code. So again, it goes back to education, communication, and teamwork, because that is ultimately what we are. As their medical coders, we are part of their team. Now, the nurses do have to work under the doctor's direction, yes, but that's not us, guys. That's not us. We have to work with them as their teammate, all right? So there is times when, yes, we can say no. If they want a certain code and their documentation does not support this, we have to make sure that they understand why. Because what we're looking at based on the rules and based on the description of the codes and based on the rules, you know, those are the things that we have in on our support side, right? To help us in support of our argument. Argument meaning the reason that we are selecting this code, that code. Now, I did see a post the other day from somebody who was complaining and saying that they feel like the doctors belittle them with the things that they say, as far as like showing them the rules and the guidelines and things like that. And they just don't feel like the providers respect them. And there was just a bunch of things. And it was really kind of self-directed, like it's me, 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 me. This is what it feels like. Obviously, when somebody is not conditioned to know that it's not personal. We need to understand what we're bringing to the field and what the providers are bringing in. Obviously, the providers are providing the care for these patients. These providers, they have ego, they have been to medical school, and they have a lot of things on them. They have so much responsibility on them. And so when they see somebody who has a certification and maybe a high school diploma or a GED, and that's it, telling them, oh, you're going to get this code because of this reason, that reason. And it makes them feel like, well, wait a second, I know all these things. How dare you? And so sometimes they'll attack those things like, okay, here's the guidelines, here's why. But we need to stop and look at how are we presenting what we have to help support them. Because there's two different ways that you can go. You can go in there waving your red pen, which is what they like to call when you're telling them they're doing wrong. You can go in there waving your red pen, and obviously you're not going to make any friends, right? And it's all about, okay, well, I'm the medical coder, what I say goes, and that kind of thing. And that's not the way to go. And if that's the way that they're seeing it, of course, they're going to attack, you know, whatever guidance you're bringing or whatever rules you're bringing. So let's work on our professionalism. This is how you combat this. I had to do this, guys, because I didn't know anything about interacting with providers. All I knew was that, you know, they went to medical school, they have all this knowledge. What do they care what I tell them? And it wasn't until I had an interaction with one provider one day where he says, Blue, you know, I need to learn from you. You're the one who's the medical coder. You're the one who knows all of these things. I don't understand half of this stuff that is being said to us, but I know it's important enough for my career and what I'm doing, and how am I supposed to get paid if it's not being documented right? And this is where I need you to help me. And so it was in that one instance of having that conversation that it was just like, okay, then this light bulb went on, like, you're right, you know, like I do have this knowledge. But before this, it took prodding, because this same provider who said this to me actually talked about me behind my back. And this was how I found out. So this is what I did. This is my situation. So we had a hospital administrator who was going around to all the providers asking them, what is it that you need to make you happy? That was his job. His job was to make providers happy. So in this instance, this one provider was talking about me behind my back, said, I would like more feedback from my coder. My coder doesn't speak to me, which this was not true. I had spent time away from this provider because we were housed in a separate building, and I had always emailed if something was really great on their documentation, or if I needed to query, I would always send at the end, I would say, if you have any questions or you need further assistance, please feel free to reach out. And that was it. And I never heard a thing. I never heard, hey, I do have a question, or hey this, or hey that. So I took everything was okay. And this provider had very good documentation. I mean, there was things that, of course, I was learning at the time as well, but he had good documentation as far as I was concerned. So then when this administrator went over to him and he says, yeah, I want to have more conversations with my coder. So he said this to the administrator, never said this to me, even though my office was right down the hallway from his. And so this administrator shows up one day at my office, and I'm sharing the office with my coworker at the time. And we're both working in the orthopedic and podiatry department. And so we had split these providers, and this provider happened to be mine. So this administrator comes in and says, who is the coder for this provider? And so, yeah, that's me. And he says, well, he's saying that you don't speak to him. I said, what? He said, yeah, you don't give him any feedback on how he's doing, and he just wants to make sure that he's doing everything right. I said, what? He goes, well, he was just saying. I said, no, hold on. I said, wait a second here. And this is the first time I've met this man, right? I said, wait a second. I always email him and tell him that he has really good things on his documentation. And I always ask him, if you have any questions, please let me know. He goes, Blue, sometimes doctors are not going to respond to that. He goes, in this provider's case, he goes, he wants more of that one-on-one interaction. He wants to physically talk to you, not be on email. He says he hates email. And I said, well, why couldn't he just say that? And he's like, well, that's not the way that it works. I said, well, to me, if that was what I needed, he goes, but you have to remember, they think differently than we do. I mean, doctors, they're very busy. They have all these things going on. So they don't always have the same type of social skills like other people, as far as like, hey, I need this. Some won't, some will, but some will not. And I said, I'm going to fix this right now. He said, well, wait, where are you going? I said, I'm going to go talk to him. He wants to speak to me. I'm going to go talk to him because now I'm upset, because to me, I had taken it personally. And again, I hadn't evolved yet. And now I know the difference. Now I know better. But at the time, I hadn't evolved yet. I had been like, okay, I'm taking this personally. I'm taking it personally. And that was the first thing I should not have done, was taking it personally. Because that says right there that I have no control over, my situation. This was not my fault. I had given him enough information to say, hey, come contact me if you, and he chose not to. That was on him. But me having this insider information of he doesn't like email, which he never told me. He doesn't like email, and he wants to see me in person. He wants to have that one-on-one interaction. He wants to get to know me, not through email, but in person, because he prefers that. Having that insider information helped me to understand, okay, so that's not the way that they want communication. So, okay, so I start adding this to my list. Okay, so I go over there and I march on over to his office. I knock on his door and he looks over at me, smiling his big smile, and he says, hey, and I say, hey. I said, so I heard from a little birdie that we have a problem with our communication. Now, yes, that part did come out. But again, I'm seeing this in a joking manner, but at the same time, I see that he's got a smile on his face. So he knows that this guy came and talked to me, and he knows what I'm there for. And again, this was where I need to kind of work on my professionalism and communication, things like that. But because I knew that this provider was not going to be so like, rah, he was going to be like, okay, yay, we can communicate now. And so I was just like, okay, so like, what's going on, And so I told him, I said, well, what's going on? I said, because I said, I seem to recall that I did write to you and I asked you if you needed assistance or if you had any questions to please let me know, and I never heard anything. He's like, well, I don't like email. I said, I really wish I would have known that. I said, if I would have known that you didn't like email, I would have came over. And he said, well, I would just really like to understand what it is that we need to do. And, I want to know if I'm doing everything right. I said, I have no issue with your documentation. Your documentation is on point. And he goes, but I feel like it could be better. And so I said, so you want me to look for things that are wrong with your documentation? And he's like, not look for things. He goes, but I think that, if I can improve, that's what I would like to know. And so I said, okay. I said, well, fine. If that's what you want, we'll start working together on this. And so he said, okay. And so I said, all right. And then so that was good. We were good after that. And then he said, okay. And so I went back to my office and I said to myself, I said, okay, so this means I need to work on my communication as far as this was not the avenue that they wanted. So he can't be the only provider that's like this. So then I started to actually walk around in my clinic and say hello to people. And I would ask them, do you have any questions? And so that really did open up the doors for me. So that mitigated that issue, right? And I understand if you're working at home and you're doing remote medical coding, it might be a little bit harder for that, which is why I don't recommend remote medical coding for brand new medical coders, because you need that time to get to know those providers, because it's very easy for them to ignore email. But after that, after I understood, right, that part, I knew that I couldn't take it personally if they never responded to me. And if they tried to question my knowledge, which that did happen, because at the time we were going into ICD-10 and we were coming out of ICD-9. Everybody was learning ICD-10. So I'm having to sit here and say and quote all these kind of guidelines and things like that. And a lot of them would be like, oh, no, that doesn't apply to us. Yes, it does. And this is the reason why. And I would show those things. And so when they would say, oh, no, we're going to do it this way. And I said, okay, then this is the result of that action. And so there was that time of, okay, I have to stand up and say that I can't just say, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you're right. That's the number one thing that you don't do, is you don't ever apologize if you haven't done something wrong. There's a lot of people who say, and they think they're looking real demure and, like non-threatening if they start off with, oh, I'm sorry, I have a question. If I'm a doctor, I'm going to get really irritated with that too. Because number one, don't ever apologize if you didn't do anything wrong, okay? Number two, you're partners. And they learn this. They learn that you are partners when you bring the language of a partner, which is, do you got a second? Can we go over this? And that's as simple as that, because they like when you're direct and to the point. So being more direct will help you. Not taking things personally when they try to question your knowledge is a huge part as well. And that's going to help you to say, okay, it's not me personally. It's that they're trying to fight against this thing because they've never had a coder to dig in, right? And that's the way that you can look at it. But for those providers that were saying, well, no, we're going to go ahead and do it this way. And I told them, okay, well, then the action of that will be that these are the codes that you're going to get, because this is what is supported in this documentation. So they were upset. But then when the overall averages for accuracy came out for the hospital, and their clinic was among the highest, if not the highest, and I remember it was the highest, then they were like, oh, it's your coder who did it. So then the things started to change. They were like, oh, okay, well, she knows what she's talking about. Okay, so we're going to trust what she says. But that took effort in talking to them and in saying, it's not just about showing you these guidelines. It's about me making sure that I'm very clear with my communication with you, that everything is consistent. And if I ever have to change anything, or if anything ever changes, I'm going to let them know right away. And talking to them on a regular basis, talking with your providers on a regular basis, and not just talking to them when they are doing something bad or when you have to query them, but actually talking to them when they do something great is so welcome. And that's the thing that a lot of coders miss out on. They miss that opportunity to connect with their providers in that way, because It's always about query, query, query. You did this wrong, that wrong, that wrong. But what about the times when they are doing something really great? Let them know. Let them know. I've had many instances where I was so excited because they had improved their documentation, and I would run over, and if I could catch them in their office, I would tell them, "You did so great." And they were like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Did you, okay, so," and I would show them their documentation. I said, "This is perfect. This is exactly what, we've discussed before, or this is exactly fitting for, whatever situation is being documented." And I said, "This is great." And sometimes I would tell them when I increased their evaluation and management level, sometimes they would undercode themselves, and I would have to bump it up. And I was like, "Okay, it's actually this level." And they go, "Wow, how did I do that?" And I would tell them, "Okay, this, and this." So it is about communication. And for those of you who feel like your providers are like, they're very gruff, and, and they want their way, and that's it. That's something that you need to work on for yourself. You need to be as assertive, but as professional as you possibly can. So that way they know that you're not there to be pushed over. You're not there to, cower to whatever they say, but you're actually there to be their teammate. And I tell them all the time, I said, I back y'all up. I said 100% of the time. And that's why I say nobody talks to them but me. Because if they're going to get any direction from anybody in coding, it's going to be me, because I'm their coder and I'm responsible for them. And they appreciate this, because sometimes if they have coders who are talking to them from all different kinds of departments and everything, and saying one thing and saying another thing, it teaches them not to listen at all. And that's another challenge. So that's why I say I'm very clear with that. For my supervisor, we have this discussion many times of, in the beginning, where, she had emailed them, and I said, "Well, wait a second, why didn't I know?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I was just telling them this, and this." I said, "Actually," and so she goes, "Oh," and I said, "Yeah." So I said, everything needs to come through me. That's the way that it should be, because they need to hear from one voice. Because if they start hearing from too many different people, it's like too many cooks in the kitchen, okay? Things start to get a little hairy. But again, teaching yourself not to take things personally will go a long way in that. Professional communication, being clear and speaking up, not mumbling or apologizing, is going to do you a world of good when you're communicating with them, because they'll see, okay, this person has confidence. We can rely on them. We can depend on them. And that's what you need to be able to have to build that trust. Okay, so trust is a huge thing. And again, being consistent with them is the key. All right. The other challenge will be when you are getting audited and you have to stand up for yourself and for that documentation, and you have to stand up against people who have, years of experience, and they're veterans, and sometimes you're going to show the exact guideline, and that auditor is going to be upset because that auditor is going to say, "Well, I have had all these years, and here comes this new hotshot thinking that they know everything because they got one thing right." And so that's the thing. You have to know when you're speaking up, that you have to be as respectful as you can with these auditors, but then still show them, because it's not about just accepting what audits and what errors they say. It is about standing up for what's right in the documentation, what's appropriate, and what is there. What you can't do, which is another challenge, is not accept the auditor's strikes, not accept the auditor's errors. Because if they can show you, which hopefully your auditor will show you why you got it wrong, if they can show you why you got it wrong, and they can give you a reference as to why, you don't sit there and continue to argue with them because you don't want this person to tell you that you're wrong. Then you are wrong. Because again, it is about, there's going to be some give and take. There's going to be times when you are going to make mistakes in your coding. Sometimes it's just a simple error, and sometimes it's just like, whoa, what was I thinking? But when you do those things, you have to be willing to say, okay, I accept it. I made an error. I made a mistake. Don't go against it because the person who's doing the auditing, you don't want them telling you that you're wrong. It's not personal, guys. They're going to lose some. You are going to lose some. But it's going to happen. And the more that you prepare yourself, the more that you look at those TED Talks about being more self-confident in the workplace and being more professional and learning to speak clearly and communicate very clearly, the better off you are going to be. And if you keep telling yourself, oh no, I'm not a very good communicator, my words get all jumbled up, then you need to start working on that. That's something that you can work on, because it's going to make it a lot easier for you. Trust me, guys. And the last thing that I will bring up that medical coders struggle with is not knowing their particular specialty, whatever they're coding for, whether it's cardio, ortho, neuro, and maybe they're going a little slow and you're not able to keep up with production. You're not able to keep up with production for a couple of reasons. And one of those reasons is because you don't understand the documentation, or you don't understand the procedures that are happening with fluency enough to be able to recognize them. So that is going to take some practice. That is going to take you taking the initiative to look at the websites that are related to that specialty so that you can learn more about that specialty. I spend a lot of time on orthopedic websites trying to figure out what is what, even to this day, because it's very important for me and having that knowledge to know all of those things. It's also very important for me as an orthopedic coder. Okay, I got to know the bones. I got to know the muscles. I have to know anatomy, because these things are, I mean, the code can simply change, right? Just by one word. And knowing that is going to help me to get faster with coding for ortho. Okay, so, and that's my advice to you guys. If you are having troubles keeping up with productivity, that's another thing that you can do, is to research your particular clinic. Get with the people that, you know, are doing those procedures and talk to them. Ask them, what are those procedures and what is it about? So that way you can do your research on those things. Don't run back and forth to the provider with simple questions. If they are complex questions that you really need some kind of help on, let them know. I could use your help understanding this. What I found was this, this, and this, but my question is this. They need to see that you've made an effort to learn it, not just like, I don't understand this, what's going on? And then have them explain you the whole thing. Don't do that to them, because then they're going to know that you didn't even put in the effort to try. All right. It's all about putting that effort in, guys. And this is stuff that takes years to develop. Being a medical coder is not just about learning how to use the books and learning how to properly code. It is about that human interaction that we have to have and we have to master, not just with our providers, but with our other coworkers as well. And there's going to be some of your coworkers who will not want your help, and that's okay, because for me, everybody knows in my hospital, if you have an orthopedic question, you go to Bleu, because I'm the one who knows it the best. I'm the one who knows it the most. Everybody knows this. And I've done education with some of these coders. And trust me, I know there's a lot of them, it's an ego thing that they don't want to ask me because they don't want to show that they have this question. And if that's your problem and that you can't put your own ego aside, guys, you're going to lose out in this field if you don't learn how to put your ego aside. I have had to learn to put my ego aside. But then I have also learned that if I really don't know something, I'm going to have to dig deep before I go seek help. So that's just my advice anyway, guys. There's a lot to it. And I hope that the messages on my channel give you some sort of guidance on where to go when you are facing these issues. But guys, don't ever take this stuff personally. It's not personal. The more you develop in this field, the easier that it will be for you to recognize these things. And yeah, it's not always the nicest thing when you experience gruffness from a provider, but trust me, sometimes they are just having a bad day, and sometimes you are just right in the right place at the right time, or wrong place at the wrong time, and you're the one who catches it. So don't ever take it personally, guys, okay? Just continue to work with it, change your approach. Sometimes you have to take a different approach when handling providers, okay? Sometimes it's more about like, okay, well, if they respond well to, the good stuff, then you need to incorporate more of that into your communication with them. Because it never hurts to let them know that they're doing well as well. I'm just saying. So I'm gonna wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, I hope you will like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.